Welcome everyone to the Office of Business Diversity and Compliance, or the OBDC as we like to call it around here. I'm Taylor Tagg, Senior Business Services Coordinator with OBDC. We welcome you to another edition of our webinar, Entrepreneurs Webinar Series, and Steve Phipps from Wayfind Marketing. If you're new to OBDC, our business is twofold. Our purpose is twofold. We certify businesses to work with the City of Memphis in a variety of capacities as minority-owned, women-owned, and small business enterprise. And number two, we help entrepreneurs overcome their struggles and thrive as small business owners. This webinar series is part of that purpose, and we're glad to have Steve with us today. You can find OBDC at 480 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue in downtown Memphis, or you can call us at 901-636-9300 to speak with a business navigator for any need that you may need in your small business. Our guest today is Steve Phipps. Now, Steve started Wayfind Marketing in 2015 to make marketing easier for small businesses. Now, he leads clients to clarify their message and implement marketing that helps to grow their business. Steve's owned several businesses in the past, including a Chick-fil-A franchise, and he's also helped hundreds of small business owners over the last decade. Steve also hosts a weekly podcast called Wayfind Marketing Live to help small business owners navigate their marketing. And today, Steve is with OBDC to share with you how to create a one-page marketing plan for your marketing success. If you have any questions during the time here today, feel free to type them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll get to them towards the end of the webinar. Again, we want to thank Steve Phipps for being here at OBDC. Steve, how are you today? It's all yours. Take it away.
All right, Taylor, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. And for everybody jumping in here on Zoom and on the live stream, great to meet you. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. So let me share my screen. All right. So today we are going to talk about how to build a marketing plan. And the reason why that's important is because the reality for most of us as a small business owner, as a solopreneur, usually we're winging it when it comes to marketing. I've worked with scores of business owners locally across the country and occasionally internationally. And this is a very common scenario. There's no clear plan, and it really is just kind of winging it. And you know, depending on how you started your business, you know, a lot of times there's sort of these aspirational dreams of what it's going to look like. And really, when we get into the day-to-day operations, running the business, scaling, growing, adjusting, having to pivot, all of these things, what we realize is that running a business is hard. If you have employees, hiring, training, retaining, all of the different moving pieces. And then when it comes to marketing the business, that just adds in another layer of complexity. And so what I've seen consistently is what I call spaghetti marketing. And the idea of this is that a lot of business owners, when it comes to marketing, it really is it's trying different things and seeing what works. And it's kind of the old adage of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And so usually what ends up happening is that approach, it results in a variety of different things. Confusion. When you're trying to manage your business and the marketing, that's a lonely place. A lot of times there's not somebody to talk to, especially when it comes to marketing. There's never enough time trying to figure out, how do I run this campaign on Facebook? Should we do email? Should I be here? Should I do this? Should I do that kind of ad? You just don't have time to figure it all out. And a lot of times that can lead to wasted money, putting money into a campaign and not getting any results. We all know it's stressful, especially in times when it's really important to be able to grow your business, to bring new customers in through the door. And that type of approach without a plan, that spaghetti kind of marketing, it really is just a lack of results. And so that just, it can lead to, again, a lot of frustration and a lot of questions. And so what I do, and what the point of today is really this idea of, what if you had a simple plan to guide your marketing, to have a framework that could help you put things into context and better understand why certain marketing tactics are better at certain things than others, and how to put those together. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And so this tool, what I call the one-page marketing roadmap, this is a tool that I've put together with our team and that we use with our clients to take all of these different moving pieces, all of these things, and this really ever-changing marketing landscape, and let's get it onto one page so you have a resource that you can use to make better marketing decisions, so you can see better marketing results. And for everybody that's registered for this event, we'll make sure you get a copy of this. We'll get you a PDF of this. Now, before we jump into that, I want to think about some of the benefits of a plan, because a lot of times having a plan is something that a lot of us would say, well, yeah, that's good. I should have a plan, but I just don't have the time. But think about it. If you have a plan, what that can lead to is winning more customers. What you choose to do from a marketing perspective, both the investment of your time, your money, it's more effective because you're getting better results. It's more efficient because you're not wasting your time on things that aren't going to work. So, you're not wasting as much time, or you're not wasting your time and money. Brings your stress and frustration down because, again, you have a plan. It gives you a filter because, there's a really good chance that you're getting approached by salespeople on a semi-regular basis about different kinds of advertising, whether it's a TV station, whether it's Yelp calling and trying to sell you ads on their website, whatever it is. This gives you a framework that you can use to go back to. So it's not just knee-jerk reactions. And it lets you focus more on your business because, again, you've got a plan that's giving direction to your activity. Now, one of the things I want to jump into for just a minute here is to give a definition to marketing, because marketing is one of those things. When I share with people that I'm in marketing, there are a lot of different interpretations of what that means. So we're working from the same definition. This is how we define marketing. It is the sustained, keyword, sustained. Marketing is ongoing. It's not just a one-time activity. Use of words, pictures, media, and various activities to reach, influence, and communicate. And we're going to talk about this. We'll jump into something here in just a minute that will help us better understand the journey that people go through when they're making a buying decision. Because when we better understand that, it can help give more direction and context to our marketing, both what we say and the channels through which we say it. It's to a defined audience to encourage them to do business with you. One of the things that I hear sometimes is, especially if your product or service is applicable to a very broad audience, well, who's your target audience? And sometimes the response is, well, it's everybody. Well, I've yet to meet the business owner who has enough budget to market to everybody. So it's important to narrow that down. A defined audience to encourage them to do business with you. Effective marketing builds trust and credibility. That is crucial because people don't buy if they don't trust you, if they don't trust that you're going to generate the results that they're looking for. And ultimately, good marketing and effective marketing helps clients make the best choice. And in some cases, you may not be the best choice. And so we want to make sure that people understand what you do, why it matters, what they need to do next so they can make the best decision. Now, there's three questions ultimately that we boil this down to when it comes to marketing, and that's, what can I do? So those are the tactics, that's social media, it's the different channels. Number two is, what do I say? The words that we use to communicate are crucial because that can create clarity or our words can create confusion. If we create confusion, we're going to lose opportunities. And then the third is how do I do it, which is process and execution. And so one of the things that you want to think about, this is a little bit of a paradigm shift as you think about your role in marketing, as you think about your role in helping your customers and future customers make the best decision, is you are the guide. And here's what I mean by that. There are a number of stories, so be it book form or movie form, where there is a character in the story who's not the hero, but who helps the hero succeed. So if you think about Star Wars, for example, is kind of a classic example. Luke Skywalker is the hero of the story, but Luke doesn't become the hero. He does not succeed without help from Yoda and Obi-Wan. So in the context of your business, your customers are the hero. You are the guide. The story is not about you. The story is about them and how you help them succeed. So a little bit of a paradigm shift. And a lot of what I'm talking about today, if you're looking for a book recommendation, there's a book called Building a Story Brand, and it's by Donald Miller. And I'm actually certified in that particular framework. We use that as we help our clients create messaging that's clear and compelling. It's based on the structure of story, which is just a natural way to communicate so that people understand. Now, as we get into more of building a plan, a lot of times it's easy to just sort of rush forward and start getting to the tactics. Well, should we be on Facebook? Should we do this? Before we get there, I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about how do people buy? What does that process look like? And there are two things here. There is what I call the brand awareness spectrum, and that's the horizontal. And all of this is, you think about this is a journey that we're taking people on. And so the amount of time that it takes people to travel through this process is going to vary. It's going to depend on your product and service. Part of it's personality driven. Part of it's experience based. If somebody has had a bad experience with somebody in your industry, they're going to be slower to make that decision next time in a lot of cases. And so this here, think about, you've probably heard the adage that we want to do business with people that we know, like, and trust. Trust is absolutely essential, especially for higher dollar products and services, because there's greater risk associated with that. So think about where people are in this spectrum. People who don't know you, it's going to take longer for them to buy because they don't know you. The trust has not been established yet. Someone who has a high level of trust, they're going to be more likely to make a buying decision in your favor. Now, the worst case scenario is they have a dislike of your brand. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe someone they know had a bad experience. And if you've had any dealings with online reviews, there are a lot of cases where that negative review is not justified. But yet when it's put out into the marketplace, it certainly has influence on other people's decisions. So we want to think about this because this is always at play. Now, the other thing to think about is the buying stages. Now, these are the stages that people go through when they're making a buying decision. Now, trying to track human behavior with something that's linear, this doesn't always do an accurate portrayal because as human beings, we make decisions for a variety of reasons. And so we kind of ping pong back and forth. But ultimately, what we're looking at is, again, we're assuming target audience. These are the folks that you are trying to reach. These are the folks you want as your customers. So this first stage is this idea of contentment. They don't have a problem, or if they do, it's not enough of a problem that they're trying to solve it. The context is the problem is what you solve. So let's say you have an HVAC company. Well, if somebody's air conditioner has gone out, or maybe it's struggling, it's not keeping up, well, they may be content with their air conditioner. Maybe it's got a slow leak in it, but it's been enough. They've just been sort of able to maintain it. There hasn't been enough discomfort for them to start searching for a solution. Well, they may be unaware of you. And what we're trying to do from a marketing standpoint is drive them forward. we want them to start looking to us for a solution. But there's got to be a search trigger. And that search trigger could be their air conditioner finally goes out, or the technician comes to the house to do a recharge of the Freon and says, hey, you know what, this thing's leaking a lot of Freon. I'm gonna have to come back out in a month to refill it. So there has to be some sort of a catalyst for them to move forward. It could be your marketing, it could be an ad, it could be their circumstances. But when they start looking, you want them looking to you. So this next stage when they're looking is this first stage is what I call curiosity. And here they're doing research. They're trying to better understand what are their options, who can start solving that problem for them. And this is where we want to start engaging them. So a lot of times this is where somebody might be on your website, or if you're in B2B and you have a sales team, this may be some initial conversations. And so as they move through, the next step is this idea of enlightenment. And we want to help them better understand what we do, how we do it, how we're different, how our products and solutions ultimately can help them win. And so at this point, they might be comparing, looking at us, other vendors or competitors, other solutions that they think might solve the problem. And ultimately, what we want to do here is convert them into a lead and ultimately into a customer. And so in a B2B scenario, or again, back to our HVAC scenario, at this point here, curiosity, they're on our website. They're asking questions. Who do they serve? What kind of reviews do they have? Well, down here, they're comparing. So again, we're wanting to have that information that they can look at. Again, looking at reviews could be a big part of this. We can explain our process. Maybe there's a video that gives a quick little demonstration of how you do what you do, or how your process is different than the other guys. Well, then down here, what we want to do is this next step is that might be schedule, get a free quote, or a free system evaluation, something where we're inviting them to take that next step. Because again, you think about an HVAC system that's potentially thousands of dollars. So there's this sense of urgency, yet there's this sense of risk. They don't want to spend a bunch of money with somebody that's not going to show up, or that's not going to do good quality work. Well, here, this is where we ultimately, there's a commitment that we're asking them to make. And so at that stage, we're giving them a proposal. If it's an e-commerce store, that's the buying page, add to cart. So now they're looking at everything in the cart. And so we want to help persuade them to make that next decision, to make that commitment. So this is the commitment stage, where ultimately they're going to decide, are they going to become a customer or not? And so each of these steps is important, and different marketing tactics are tailored to different stages. So we're going to get to the tactics here in just a minute, but I want to make sure that we lay the foundation of this. Now, a couple other things I want to point out before we take the next step. When you think about this spectrum right here, there may be people who maybe you have their email address, maybe they're connected to you on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. They're not a customer. Maybe they're qualified. They're your target audience. Maybe they know, like, and trust you, but they still haven't become a customer. Well, one of the things to consider is timing. And what I mean by that is there's a window of time in which someone needs your product or service. Now, depending on what you do, that window may be very broad. If you think about something like car insurance, the window of time in which somebody is actively looking for a car, different car insurance, that's narrow. That's why companies, the car insurance companies are just pouring all this money because they want to be top of mind for when that window hits. So timing is very important. The other factor to consider is time. And what I mean by that is we each build trust at different speeds. And depending on the context, depending on the experience, depending on the personality, some people are very quick to give trust. Others, not quite so much. And so when you think about your marketing, just keep in mind that there may be people that you're marketing to who it's just taking time to build trust. And that's where having consistency of content, that's where staying in front of people on a regular basis, whatever channel. So if you want to think about Facebook, or maybe you do some sort of paid advertising or television advertising or billboards or email. Staying in front of people is important because, again, sometimes it just takes people time to build that trust. And then we also want to build, catch people at the right, when the timing is right. Okay. So if you guys have questions as I'm walking through this, please feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A. Moving on to the one-page marketing roadmap. As you can see, there's things are colored here, these different shades. And so we get sort of this light tan. This is going to be the strategic section. We'll dive into that here in just a minute. This next section, driving opportunities through persuade and win. These are the tactics to move people through that process. And when we look back at this, we talk about drive, engage, convert, persuade. You can see that corresponds to each of these blocks. And so what we want to do is think about what are the tactics that we could use at each of these stages. Next, in the blue, this is where we focus on existing customers. A lot of times there are opportunities to market to your existing customers. They've already taken that step. They've made that commitment. They've invested with you. So there is a level of trust and credibility. And so there are opportunities a lot of times to market to them. I hear a lot of times from our clients when we start working with them, they may offer 10 different services, but most of their clients are only using 2 or 3, and they don't realize that they offer the other 7. So there may be some opportunities right there within your existing customer base to market to them. And so as we go through this process, I want you to think about what is the priority, because the reality is, as you know, your time is limited. And depending on the size of your team, if you don't have a dedicated marketing person or maybe a part-time marketing person, whatever your scenario, your capacity, there's a limitation to your capacity. So it becomes important to prioritize, which is what this last box down here is. What are your top 3 priorities? What are the things that you can commit to over the course of the next 90 days? Because you want to start moving things forward, but if any one of us try to do all of these things all at the same time, it's not going to get done. So let me go ahead and jump in. Now, this here, kind of call this the base camp. I like the backpack, so a lot of my terminology tends to follow that. What's your strategy? What are some of the key things that are going to give direction to your tactics? And number 1 is, who is your primary customer? What is it about them? How would you describe them? And there's different ways to describe customers. You think about demographics. So is there a particular age range? Do you focus on, is your product more geared towards men or women? Is there a geography? There are these different factors that you want to consider. And what's the main problem that they're experiencing? And think about in terms of what's the main problem that they experience that you solve. And this is where, again, I referenced the book, Building a Story Brand. Donald Miller, he gets into this at a deeper level than what we have time to jump into today. But also think about, how are they feeling about that problem? And the reason why that's important is because if we just market based on facts and figures and just purely logic, we're going to miss opportunities, because the part of our brain that makes decisions is the part of the brain that controls emotion. And that's why a lot of times, you've probably said, or you've heard other people say, well, that was just a gut decision. It felt like the right thing. Well, that's because the part of the brain that controls emotion is the part of the brain that makes decisions. So we want to make sure to understand what people are feeling, so that when we're communicating on our website, through social media, through email, we can acknowledge those feelings. And that creates a deeper connection. What does failure look like? What happens if they don't solve the problem? We want to make sure to talk about that. We don't want to get catastrophic. Doesn't need to sound like a country song, but we want to make sure that we acknowledge what happens if somebody doesn't solve that problem. And the reason why that's important is because the crux of every story is that there's a problem, that if the problem doesn't get solved, there's going to be something that results from that. So we want to help you avoid that, which goes to the next point, and that is success. What does success look like? We want to talk about that. We want to paint that picture and help people understand when they get to your website, talk about the problem. Hey, here's the problem we know you're having. Your air conditioner isn't working, and you need somebody you can trust so you don't get ripped off, etc. We know that might leave you feeling really frustrated or scared that you're going to make a bad decision and waste a lot of money. And so we don't want your house being hot during the summer. We want to make sure that you have a great system that's going to keep you and your family cool so you can enjoy time together in the summer. So that's walking through the problem, the feelings, the failure, and success. Now, when it comes to goals, think about what is it you're trying to achieve over the course of the next 90 days, the next 12 months, the next 3 years. There are a lot of books out there about planning things out, especially for your business. There's a book called Traction. There's another book called The 12-Week Year, which are both great resources for making longer-term plans. But when you think about that, boil it down into what is it that you're trying to achieve through your marketing. It might be you're trying to generate a certain number of customers. Maybe you're trying to increase your repeat sales from existing customers. Again, whatever your measurable goals are, go ahead and look at those, not only in terms of the next 12 months, 3 years, but also the next 90 days. Now, this one thing, this is the idea of how do you solve your customers' problems better than the other guys or differently than your competitors? What is it that's distinct, but also meaningful? And defining that becomes important because that becomes a way to distinguish your business from your competitors. And that becomes important, especially in really competitive industries and verticals, looking for those distinctives that, again, are meaningful. And so maybe you have a family business that has been around for 3 generations. If that's not meaningful to your customers, I wouldn't worry about telling them that you're a 3rd generation family owned company. Now, if that does make a difference, absolutely make sure to share that. Now, this next one here is what we call the one-liner. And this is really creating a simple message that tells people what you do. And it's simply the structure of write out the problem, write out a sentence that describes your solution, and then write out a sentence that shows the result of that. And so, for instance, a one-liner that I would use is, I work with business owners who are frustrated with marketing because they don't have a plan. So that's the problem. The solution is I help them put together a strategic marketing plan that helps them grow their business. And so there's the solution and the result. And the reason why that becomes important is if you have a one-liner, then that means that you can clearly communicate what you do consistently. So if you have a team of people, if you have salespeople, they're consistently communicating that same message. And that can become a core message on your website and in other channels. So we have these 4 things here. So this becomes the foundation. And so, because as we get into tactics, we're going to be communicating through those channels. We want to make sure that we have clarity on who is our customer, where are they, how do we reach them. We understand what our goals are. We can clearly communicate how we differ from our competitors, and we can clearly tell people what we do in a way that's clear, compelling, and it eliminates confusion. Now we're getting into this next section. And overall, I refer to this as the drive section because this is all about connecting with people, moving them through the buying process, and ultimately making a decision. Now, this first block here, this drive opportunities, and this ties into this section right here, where what we're trying to do is this is how we're trying to reach people for the first time. So think about this, reaching that first point of contact. Now, that can be things. Well, so let me qualify it in this way. There are really 2 buckets of drivers. One is called inbound, the other is outbound. Inbound are those activities that help people find you online when they're searching for a solution. So that's search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising. Those are the big things. And it's making sure that you are being found when they're searching for what you offer. Now, outbound activities, that could be networking events, sales calls, cold emails, networking events, Facebook advertising, where you're targeting a known audience, I should say a targeted audience based on demographics. And so, again, depending on your business, think through what are the drivers that are going to make sense for you to make that first point of contact. Well, once you make that contact, think about the next step. Once they move forward, what we want to do is we want to start engaging people. So you can see here, how will I build trust and influence? So again, think about that spectrum. We're moving people forward. We want to build trust. If your website is confusing, if your content, if what your salespeople are saying is contradicting what they're hearing and seeing in other places, that's going to create confusion. That doesn't build trust. Our brains look for consistency. Our brains look for patterns. And so here, think about your website. That is a big place where engaging happens. That's where people are reading the content on your website. Social media is another way that people engage. And depending on, again, what your business is, it could be that a lot of your customers and potential customers are on Facebook. Maybe there are social media influencers who have influence over your target audience. And so those become tactics. So that gets into blogging, social media, email marketing. Each of those are different types of tactics that help create engagement. And it's going back to the idea of relationship. You want to build trust and credibility. And so what are some of the things that you can do here to create that engagement? Now, the next step is we move people through, this stage here. People are curious. And this is where a blog is helpful sometimes, because maybe the questions that they're searching for, where they're trying to find answers, may not be a direct line to your service, because sometimes people don't know what the solution is. So they're searching for a pain. They're trying to solve that pain. And so it might be, again, for the HVAC example, if it has to do with all of a sudden my air conditioner is getting a little bit cold, it might be, why is my air conditioner not as cold as it used to be? Or maybe if it's the thought of, well, I wonder if my air conditioner is leaking Freon. How can I tell if my air conditioner is leaking Freon? It's going to be those types of questions that, if they find you in the search engines, would bring them to your website, which then gives the opportunity to start creating engagement, building trust. So as people go to this next step, this enlightenment, what we're trying to do is, again, a lot of this is happening on your website. If you have salespeople, it could be these conversations with your salesperson. What we want to do here is, the goal is to convert. We want to move them to the next step in the process. And one of the ways to do that is offer something of value that they can get for free. And a lot of times a way to do that is have something that simply asks them to give you their email address. So this could be some sort of a downloadable PDF. Could be, hey, give us your email address and we'll give you this free 7-day workshop. Get a free email or get a free video every day for the next 7 days, and we're going to teach you how to do something. It could be in the example of the air conditioner. Hey, download this free air conditioner checklist. Like, here are all the things that you want to check off to sort of troubleshoot it at home. You've been on websites where there's a little pop-up and says, hey, give us your email address and you get free shipping or get 10% off, something along those lines. So there are a lot of different ways to try to capture and nurture. And it could be a contest. Hey, give us your email address and we'll enter you into a drawing for whatever the product is. And so that's a big thing. You'll see that a lot of times on Facebook and Instagram as well. So as people step into that process, so let me say this, and this goes back to the time. Sometimes people will go through this process very quickly. If somebody comes to you because they've been referred by another customer who has had a great experience, they're coming in with a high level of trust. So they're going to go through this at a much faster pace than somebody who found you through Google or Bing. Maybe they clicked on an ad. They don't know you. They've never talked with you. They don't know anybody who has used your business, has bought your product, experienced your service. So just be mindful of that. There's also a sense of urgency depending on what the circumstances are. So people can zip through this very quickly. Somebody may literally in the matter of a few minutes go straight through these stages and pull the trigger to become a customer, whether that's buying on your website or requesting the free inspection or whatever it is you're offering. They're going to move through it quickly. Other people are going to take more time. And so that's where having some sort of a lead offer becomes helpful for those folks that are going to take a longer time. Or again, maybe it's a timing thing. If you capture their name and email address, then you have the opportunity to market to them with email. You can stay in front of them. You can share examples of the work you've done, share other information and resources that are helpful. And again, it's slowly moving them towards this next step of persuading them to become a customer. And whatever the buying process is for your business, again, if you're B2B, you're sales driven, it might be, we're going to sit down and give them a proposal, whether in person or virtually. Sometimes if it's on your website, it's an e-commerce transaction. Maybe it's getting people into your store or your restaurant. But ultimately what we want to do is get them to that decision point of deciding whether or not they're going to become a customer. And at that stage, and even throughout, using testimonials, case studies, examples of other customers who have had good experiences. Again, every step of this, we want to be building trust and credibility. So sometimes on an e-commerce website, it could be testimonials on the checkout page. It's the different logos that, hey, this is a secure site or 100% guarantee. Any of those kinds of things. If you're B2B in your sales process, making sure that you're communicating what's your commitment to your customers. Do you have a guarantee? Have you shared customer testimonials, proof points that demonstrate that you're trustworthy? And so again, we're always wanting to lower that sense of risk, increase the level of trust. So our drivers, again, this is search engine optimization, pay-per-click, could be Facebook advertising, engaging, or this could be networking events and speaking presentations, engaging, blogging, social media, email marketing. Sometimes this is kind of grassroots. I owned a Chick-fil-A franchise in Oak Court Mall for 4 years. So this is 2004 through the very beginning of 2008. And one of the things that I did is usually about once a month, once every other month, I would walk the mall and I would stop. I would have conversations with the employees in the other stores because that was going to be my primary audience. And so that was a way for me to engage and build trust. Convert and nurture. Is there something that you can offer in exchange for a name and an email address? Then you can begin using email marketing to stay in front of them. And then persuade and win. What are some of the things that you can do? Testimonials, logos, things along those lines that are building that trust and credibility. So these are just a few examples of some of the drivers. Engagers, this is your website, blogging, social media, retargeting ads or ads that show to people who have been on your website and have left. You've probably seen those ads. Converters, these are again, different types of offers that people would find valuable enough to give you a name and an email address. So now let's think about your existing customers. How are you marketing to your existing customers now? Now, the very first step is creating raving fans. And this really, it's not so much a marketing thing per se, but yet it's very much connected to marketing. And that's, are you creating these great customer experiences that are creating raving fans? Now, a satisfied customer is good, but that doesn't create loyalty. So what are things that you're doing to create these great customer experiences that are going to create loyalty? Now, when you're doing that, so when I was at Chick-fil-A, just a super simple example of that was, we started saying "my pleasure" anytime somebody said thank you. I would go out into the food court, usually a few times a week, especially during lunch when there were a lot of people in the food court. And I would always stop by our customers' tables and I would just check in with them. Hey, how is everything? Is there anything we can do to make your experience better? And it doesn't have to be big, fancy, flashy things. It could be having conversations. It could be a little gift when somebody becomes a customer. All sorts of different ways, even with products that, if you sell products through Amazon, I know we've had products come through and it's like, there's like a little handwritten note in there from the business owner or from the team, or just little things that create those little touches, those little distinctives. If you create those kinds of experiences, it's easier to market your business because people want to talk about it. Next is grow lifetime customer lifetime value. Are there products and services that you offer that your customers aren't using? Part of the way to communicate that with them could be, if you're, again, B2B or you have an account team, it's just reaching out to customers and letting them know, having conversations. This is another good way to use email. If you have your customers' email addresses, share, send a monthly email, send a monthly sales email, share some other information that's useful, helpful, informative, include links to your blog. Maybe share a little bit about what's going on with your company. If it's relevant to your customers, share examples of customer wins, but stay in front of people. Make sure they know and understand what you offer. And if you identify customers that aren't using other services, that could be a really good opportunity to build a campaign around that. Spreading the word is all about getting your customers to help you market your business. And depending on your line of business, that could be online reviews. There are different tools out there that can help generate those. There's a tool called Bird Eye. There are a number of other tools out there that are designed specifically to help capture and publish those online reviews. Could be referrals. Again, in a B2B scenario, are you asking people for referrals? Are you asking them to share names and contacts with you? And then the other is testimonials. Testimonials are very powerful because it establishes credibility from somebody that really doesn't have anything to gain by sharing their experience. They're not getting paid to do it. They're simply willing to share their experience because it's been good and they see the value in helping other people understand that experience. And what happens is this spreading the word. When you capture those testimonials, that becomes content you can put out on social media, share through email, put on your website. So as potential customers are going through those first steps, when they're on your website, they're engaging, you're wanting to help establish, you want to help them make a commitment to take that next step. Those testimonials can be a big part of that. Using case studies. Again, those are some different examples. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground. The goal of this is to give you a framework where you can start brainstorming and start writing down those different ideas. What can you do to drive traffic? What can you do to engage? What can you do to capture and nurture? What can you do maybe to persuade people at the moment of buying? Are there things you can do to start creating raving fans? Are there things you can do, ways that you can market to your existing customers? And then what can you do to capture those testimonials, generate referrals and online reviews? And a lot of times what I find is that for most business owners, it's not a lack of ideas, but it's a lack of a framework with which to move those ideas forward. And so my hope of this quick presentation is to give you a framework so you can see how some of these tactics fit together that social media in and of itself isn't necessarily going to be a good driver. It's great for creating engagement and it can drive, but it takes longer. Whereas something like pay-per-click ads or other campaigns that go direct to your audience to try to start moving them forward are more effective, just simply because that's what they're designed to do. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you've been taking notes, start thinking about what are your top 3 priorities. Maybe your top priority number 1 is define my target audience. Maybe it's, hey, we've got a lot of traffic on our website, but we're not capturing any leads. So maybe we need to put together some sort of a lead offer. Or maybe you look and go, hey, you know what? Our website's confusing. If you ever struggle with that question of, hey, what do you do? I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and that's exactly his challenge. He said, I know what we do. It's technical. And so when somebody asks me that, I feel like a deer in headlights. And at some point, I'm just going to tell them everything. And that becomes overwhelming. So maybe it's getting your messaging cleared up. Again, maybe the priority is, one of the priorities is, hey, we're going to put together a campaign to reach out to our customers. If you're looking for email, if you need an email tool, look at something like MailChimp. If you're looking for a way to email your customers outside of Outlook or Gmail. So now it's your turn. Start thinking about your plan. Prioritize your activities and then break it into tasks. Get it on the calendar. And one of the things that I would encourage you to do is get some accountability. Have somebody, if you have another business owner that you can have weekly calls with, great, check in. Hey, what are the things that you're going to commit to do this week? And how'd you do on the things that you were going to do last week? And then keep your goals in mind, track how you're moving forward. So I want to open it up. I know I've covered a lot. If you have any questions, please feel free to toss those either in the chat or the Q&A box.
Well, Steve, appreciate that presentation. What a wonderful experience to begin putting together this one-page marketing plan. And again, we encourage everyone here, if you want to type questions in the Q&A or the chat, we'll answer them here online for everyone. We just have a few minutes left, so we'll get into some of those questions. I guess I'll start off, Steve. So could you give us just a little bit more of how do you go about filling out this one-page marketing plan? I know we saw each of those sections, but where should we start with this process here?
So what I would encourage someone to do is, and it's a great question, I would start back with this right here. And that's who are you marketing to? And even if you feel like you have a good idea, maybe you've already written this down. Some people call this marketing personas or avatars. Start there. Write down a good description. Who is your ideal customer? You might have multiple ideal customers, but start writing that down, because really that's going to give all of your content and your marketing direction. If you've got that, great. What are your goals? Do you have that written down? Do you have some sort of clarity over what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to track your progress toward that? And again, it could be super simple. Hey, we're going to try to get 25 new customers this next quarter. Great. And then just these other pieces as well, the one thing and the one-liner. So I would say if you don't have that, start there, because that's going to feed into all the other things. Because when you think about making presentations or having a conversation with someone, if you're talking to someone who is your ideal customer, but you don't have clarity on what you do and the problems you solve, as soon as you open your mouth, if you've had that experience where you start talking and immediately people sort of glaze over, I think we've all had that experience, whether you're the person talking or whether you're the person receiving that explanation. That lack of clarity is going to cost opportunities. So I would definitely, if this hasn't been fleshed out, I would start there.
Okay, wonderful. We want to let everybody know as well that if you did register for this webinar, you will receive this template so you can begin to fill this out for yourself. I know we did have a comment from Miss Mia Earl. She said that she realized that she needed a specific framework, that she doesn't have a framework that's easy to follow to be able to begin to market her business. So I guess that maybe, lead me to my next question. Again, Steve, we need to know how we can contact you or people can contact you so they can talk to you about this framework. If they want additional help with it, they know how to find you.
Sure, absolutely. And so my contact information there on the screen, our website, wayfindmarketing.com. And so we've got some resources there. We've taken a little bit of a pause on our weekly live stream, but we've got about 30 to 40 episodes from last year where we've paused it temporarily. We're kind of doing a reboot of our own marketing and content. We'll be relaunching that in the next few weeks. But there's plenty of blogs, videos. We've got a downloadable PDF on 6 things every website needs to generate more leads. And again, we'll get this template out to everybody who's registered.
Excellent. And I guess I do have a follow-up question too, because this is maybe for my own benefit here. And I am concerned, I guess. What is your take on testimonials? Because I know that if you're in that part of the research phase with your customer, testimonials can probably make a big difference in the decision making. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of testimonials, and something that can precede getting the testimonials. Again, depending on your business, your relationship with your customers. One of the things that I'm a big proponent of is having conversations with your customers. Have a 5 or 10 minute conversation with them and ask their opinion. Ask them, what is it that you do that they value the most? How do you make their life better? How would they describe what you do to someone else? And a lot of times in those conversations, you'll start to hear feedback that would make a great testimonial. So that becomes a good starting place, because one, what that does is that gives you insight into building out your description, what we would say our marketing personas. But that also gives you content that would be good for testimonials. And then at that point, it would just be having that conversation with them and asking them, say, hey, here's something you said. Can we use that as a testimonial? Or, video testimonials are always the ideal. And again, sometimes it can even just be somebody on their iPhone, just sharing their thoughts about you, your product, your service, what they appreciate, and using that as well. So there's a couple of different ways there, but absolutely testimonials there's a lot of value in that, because it establishes your expertise, your ability to solve problems from somebody that's going to have a little bit more credibility. I mean, if you think about it, if you buy anything on Amazon, I'm willing to bet that you're looking at the reviews in some form or fashion to get some idea of whether or not you're going to buy that product.
And Steve, we also had another question about Facebook ads. I'm sure that's a big topic for a lot of people. What do you see, or how do you see Facebook ads playing out?
So I'm going to give a marketer's answer to that, and I'm going to say it depends. And here's what I mean by that. If we go back to these stages, if you think about the context of when somebody's on social media, so be it Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever social channel, but in this case, Facebook, generally people go to Facebook because they're sort of checking out. It's a distraction. It's to stay in connection with other people, but by its nature, it's one of those things that we just sort of scroll mindlessly. We laugh, we get angry, whatever the reaction is to what we're seeing in our news feed. And so when we reach somebody there, what we want to think about is this idea of know, like, and trust. And so Facebook ads, there's a lot of different ways they can be used. So if let's say, for instance, you have a Facebook page and you have 1,000 people who like your page. Well, one way to use a Facebook ad is simply to get a post in front of more of that audience. By default, Facebook posts to a business page are only going to reach a small percentage of the people who like the page. It's just part of their business and revenue model. So that's one way to use it. Now, another way to use Facebook ads is you're reaching a cold audience. And so it's an audience that has been identified based on demographics, all the different targeting factors that Facebook has in their ad builder. And so when you're reaching someone who probably doesn't know you, here's the risk. If they're here, this idea of contentment, but I'm asking them to make a commitment, I've skipped these steps, and these steps are designed to build trust and credibility. It's all a relationship. So the Facebook ad itself may not be a bad idea. It could be a good way to start getting in front of people, to start moving people through this process. But if I'm asking somebody to do something down here and they don't know who I am, there's no trust established, then the success rate of that ad is going to be minimal at best. Now, if I take ads and I start targeting an audience and I'm sharing some video or some content that's helpful, it doesn't really require a whole lot of thought on their part, because again, they're there sort of checking out. It's a distraction from whatever their day has been. And so if I start building that trust and credibility, well, then what I'm doing is I'm taking people. You can see we have this diagonal going down to the top left, the bottom right. Well, then what I'm doing is I'm gradually starting to move them through this process. And so if I've had a couple of things in front of them, and then I ask them to download something, or then I ask them to do something that's a little bit more of a commitment, then that success rate comes up because I've been helping them figure out, who am I? Do I like this guy? Do I like what he says? Do I like the product? Do I like the service? Do I trust? And so another effective way to use Facebook ads is retargeting. And that is showing ads to people who've been on your website, or they can also be shown to people if you show videos to a particular audience and they watch a certain percentage of that, you can then show them additional ads based on their interaction. So yes, Facebook ads can be effective, but it's putting it in context of what's the goal, what's their relationship to you, and is it moving them forward one trust step at a time?
Well, excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that and breaking that down for us. Again, if you don't mind putting up your information there for people to see where we can find Steve and really probably talk about this whole process as well. It's a good exercise in your small business to go through. Yeah. So now you can figure out where your customers are, but also put them on a path. And I'm sure Steve's more than willing to help you figure that process out. And again, we're up on the hour. And so again, we want to thank everybody for joining us here at OBDC for another Entrepreneurs Webinar series. And we'll see you again soon for the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.